Right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Inshallah, today we're actually going to be continuing the series that we were talking about in terms of engagement and the rulings in regards to engagement. So let's just kind of go over some of the things that we talked about. We talked about Islam, we talked about the ruling of a Muslim woman marrying a non-Muslim man, and we also talked about the ruling of a Muslim man marrying non-Muslim women, whether Christian, Jew, or even other faiths. And we talked about piety, choosing piety. So we're not just talking about the basic limit of a person being Muslim, but we're talking about a person actually taking Islam seriously in their life. So this is basically what we mean by piety. It's how considerate, how seriously are they taking care, and are they choosing Islam as their principles, as basically their choices in life? So that's the question right there. We talked about that the Prophet ﷺ had encouraged for both men and women, not necessarily just women, but even men, encouraged them to choose piety, because at the end of the day, what you want to consider is that you have a center. Your center is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the judgment day. So you want to make sure that you choose faith over the different things that people would choose in dunya. So that's what we mean by piety, that even when other options were available, definitely they will take the option of Islam as always their priority. That's basically what we mean by piety. And we also talked about the whole issue. Just because somebody is religious doesn't necessarily mean that this is guaranteeing a successful marriage. And that's why looking at other issues such as level of education, job, personality, or even physical needs, etc., looking at the character, family expectations, all those different areas are also very important to make sure that people are basically taking in consideration the different factors that may affect the relationship, may affect the marriage, may affect the dynamics and so forth. So basically taking care and being considerate over these other issues as well. The Prophet ﷺ did encourage certain qualifications that are beyond piety. So of course, in a society, not only piety, but we talked about those hadith, but we also talked about the option of being single. And this is important whether we're talking about a man being single or whether we're speaking about a woman being single. So therefore, just seeing that that certainly somebody that had a marriage experience, or probably the divorcee, whether we're speaking about a man or a woman, they definitely come with another package. But that does not mean that we would abandon those people, we would not choose them. Sometimes they would be a better option. So, but we just have to keep in mind that there can be certain things that you have to take in mind just to make sure that you are making the right choice, and certainly making sure that you are prepared for the different obstacles that may come with the other option. We also talked about fertile. Being able to get children was also a recommendation that the Prophet ﷺ had basically recommended for men and women. But there are certain cases where perhaps maybe this person has genetic disorders, or perhaps a possibility of maybe getting children that are perhaps ill or anything of that sort. Then in that situation, we can consider other options depending on the circumstance. Okay, so depending on the person's circumstance, I do have friends. She was a friend that was Palestinian, of course, lived in Palestine. And why did I say Palestinian? Of course, because of the context that you're going to see. So she had a certain illness. It really wasn't a dangerous illness, but to later later discover that when she was given an antibiotic, it wasn't really the right antibiotic. It was not the right medication, and that the medication, quote unquote, and the drug that she was given was also coming with a side effect of making her infertile. It was prescribed to her by an Israeli doctor, and she basically became infertile. She knew that she was infertile before even getting married, because later she studied to become a lab technician. And when she knew about the medication, she knew how to research that and all of that. And then she did herself the different exams and tests, and she knew that she was actually infertile, and later decided that her best option was to get married to somebody that was already married. And this man was actually married to three, and she decided to become the fourth wife. It was a good option for her. That was, I guess, the best option for her, which she considered that that was the best option. Maybe, the larger the number of wives or co-wives that are out there, there's definitely going to be a lot more drama, a lot more, to deal with. But at the end of the day, what suits person A might not suit person B. So taking that in consideration, maybe polygamy is the right option for someone, and not an option for someone else. And perhaps having a lot of children is probably a good option for person A, but definitely may not be a good option for person B. So when we say these recommendations, this is keeping in mind we're speaking about as a default recommendation, but these recommendations do not necessarily fit everyone. Just like the story of Jabir ibn Abdullah. Jabir ibn Abdullah, when he was recommended by the Prophet ﷺ to marry a woman that is a virgin, he said, well, I have young sisters, 9 young sisters, and I wanted to make sure that they would have a woman that is grown up, that is mature enough to take care of them, instead of me bringing a younger woman that might end up just getting into dramas with the younger girls and younger teenagers. So the Prophet ﷺ just made the dua for him that this marriage would be a blessed marriage. So, and of course, she had a marriage experience as well. By the way, she was not a woman that was a virgin, had a marriage experience, was an older woman, and was not a younger woman. So in other words, we're looking at understanding the fiqh of how you look at your circumstance before you take these different recommendations, as I would say, in a way that does not understand the circumstances. So this is extremely important. When you want to take a ruling, it's very important that you would understand the circumstances that surround that ruling or even that recommendation. So of course, there are certain recommendations. There's no, let's say, other way, just like, for example, a woman marrying a Muslim man. This is Thabit. This is basically something that we cannot say, oh, I've got a circumstance, let me see if it suits me, etc. No, this is something that there is no question about. There is no circumstance for us to review. It's basically, okay, well, that happens too. All right, so those situations that may arise when it comes to somebody's Islam. Of course, there's no circumstance that we would say we want to review or anything of that sort, because there's no question about it. There is no circumstance. It's not an issue of recommendation. It's an issue of an obligation. Okay, for a Muslim woman to marry a Muslim man, that's an obligation as part of what needs to be part of those qualifications. But if we're talking about the level of piety, well, that doesn't make the marriage invalid. If we're speaking about family, we're talking about fertility, we're talking about maybe, let's say, maybe social status, all of those are areas of recommendation. Therefore, you would look at your circumstance and see if this is the best option for you or not. Okay, or whether it suits you at the moment, looking at the circumstances. Let me give you more details. Let's say a sister's living in living in a situation where she needs to get married, and the only option, who knows, maybe her level of beauty was not at the highest level of beauty. She wasn't always getting these proposals. And even if she were to probably herself make herself available, she knew that she wasn't necessarily going to be at least given the opportunity to get to choose quite a lot. But at the end, she recognized that. And the only option that she had was probably to get married to somebody that is living with her, with the in-laws, with his family. And she felt that, hey, that would be the best option for me. So in circumstances, you have to recognize the reality that surrounds you. And I think putting out numbers out there is really important, to recognize what is the probability of me getting these opportunities, these options based on what you're considering. So what do I mean by that? So if you are looking at, let's just, put in numbers right there. You are putting and considering that you want somebody that has a PhD, for example, and has a great job, and let's say a billionaire, whatever. Okay, how many people are actually containing this qualification? Well, definitely not very many. And this is extremely important to keep in mind, that the more restrictions and the more to you are important qualifications, you have to look at those numbers. How many people fit this description, at least within this mile radius, or at least within this area, or even on the globe? This is extremely important, that sometimes the sisters, I'll tell you as a previous matchmaker, sometimes the sisters just think that it's an issue of me putting these conditions, and therefore I'm just honoring myself. Okay, fair enough. You can honor yourself, but you want to also take in consideration that the more restrictions, the more qualifications, the more you put on that list, the less likely you are going to find people that fit all the descriptions. So how do I deal about with this? Well, you want to keep in mind that there are certain descriptions within the society. You don't have too many people that have these descriptions. You don't have a lot of people with PhDs. You don't have a lot of people that are very rich, probably making maybe 500,000 grand and above. You don't have a lot of people that are probably homeowners and not necessarily paying mortgage. You don't have a lot of people that probably own, these types of cars or whatever. And sometimes I would say focusing on materialistic things is sometimes too exaggerated. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ wanted us to keep in mind, that you focus on, the second you focus on materialistic stuff, you end up not realizing that materialistic things, they wear off. They may wear off, and then you deal with the actual person. You deal with the person being a narcissist, or a person being a pious person, or a person that is a stubborn person, a person that is easily triggered by anything, etc. So those are the real qualifications that you really want to look for. And I know it's not easy to necessarily, let's say, investigate or see and look for markers when they come in to ask for your hand. And that's why we would always say, listen, let your family do the investigation / background check by asking his friends, because the friends, they're going to, whether friends or the people that he's working with, the people that he goes to the masjid with, or the people that know him within his neighborhood, etc. That's going to really bring in more, let's say, truthful information about the reality of his personality, because it's so easy that a person can fake it when they need a certain interest. When they have an interest, they're looking for interest, they can fake it and they know exactly how to do it. So you want to make sure that when during their time of relaxation, when there was no particular interest in mind, then that's when you're really going to see them behaving in their real self. That's what you want to get to. What is their real self? What is their true behavior like? Are they easily triggered by anything? Are they, when they get angry, how do they react? When they're angry, how fast do they cool down after this anger? Are they people that are selfish? How do they deal with their family members, specifically women? How do they deal with their sisters? How do they deal with their mother? What is their behavior like in public or even at home, in at work, etc. All of these different things are extremely important to look into, because that's really what is going to be the lens that you look through in order to understand what this person is going to be like in his future. Okay, what does that mean? A person and the way that they will behave in their future could only be seen through a lens through the past. In other words, that's the only lens that you're going to be having in order to really evaluate this person, evaluate their integrity, evaluate their behavior, evaluate really the type of person that they are in, because that's the type of person that you are going to be dealing with. Giving you promises or telling you I'm this person or that person, when they're coming in to ask for your hand, if they're really liking you, okay, that is not necessarily the person that they will necessarily be in. Okay, when they want this marriage to take place for who knows what reason, okay, they maybe do like you, maybe they like your appearance, maybe to them that's what they want, okay, but you just have to recognize that just because you are to them the reward that they're looking for, it doesn't mean that they are going to take care of it. Once you become under, let's say, their power or under their rule or within their reach in marriage, that's when all the different, let's say, intimidating reasons to why they should stick to the principle and really be the person of integrity, all of that fades away, because to them they would only show it when they have an interest, when they are in need of something, when they have an interest, that's when they would really live it. And this is extremely common. So in order to spot that, to know if this is the case, then you would really have to ask about this person. Like I said, neighbors, people that this person works with, the people that he goes to the masjid, the people that see him in the masjid or see him at school or whatever it is. Those are the people that you want to definitely have your family ask in order to make sure that this person is not fake it till they make it. Okay, so at the same time, keeping in mind that always, like I say, just because somebody has the money, it doesn't mean they're hospitable. It doesn't mean they're going to make you live with available items or materialistic things around you. It could actually be the people that are only looking for things that serve themselves, but not necessarily serve others. And I've seen this very often. Somebody can be rich, but only when it relates to them, they'll be willing to buy themselves the most expensive stuff. But when it comes to the wife, etc., all they'll be doing is that, oh, we need to save. We're actually in debt. We need to make sure that we don't buy this and that. And then it becomes extremely stingy at home, extremely hard to live with a person that is stingy, a person that is selfish, is probably one of the hardest things to live with, because it basically becomes everything that triggers their phobia of poverty or their phobia of losing money. And of course, at many times, they could be stingy even on themselves and not only on others. But when they're stingy on others and stingy on themselves, they're just wanting their security to be with numbers and not necessarily to be with what makes them secure. What makes them secure at home, there are certain things that are worth more than the money. A person that takes money as the most valuable thing in life is really something to just put a, let's say, a red flag around that person, because remember, money is the cheapest thing. If money is more valuable to this person than your health, than your comfort, than your then perhaps maybe his family's comfort, or maybe then we've got a problem, because the value of health, the value of comfort, the value of perhaps the relationship, if losing your mother to you is more important than the money, then or lose then that's when I would consider that this person is of integrity. But if losing money is more important to you than losing your mother or losing your sister or your brother, then I've got an issue. If to you money is the most important thing, then you're not a person of integrity. Then you're not a person that really cares about the value of relationships, the value of your family, etc., then to you, money is the most important thing, even if they dressed in a suit. Number two, keep in mind that education is not necessarily a reflection of somebody's understanding. Somebody can be a doctor, and I've seen this very often. He can be a doctor, but be extremely violent. They can be doctors but be nothing but narcissist beings. And by the way, just keep in mind, and I've said this before, a lot of these narcissist people are extremely smart, maybe politicians, maybe doctors, maybe in their highest level of, let's say, of what we would consider as a privileged and a successful person. But you want to keep in mind that a lot of these narcissists are very good at getting to the highest level of what they're wanting to get to. And then they end up really just knowing, very smart in knowing how to get to their goals, but then all they care about is really their own selves. And they will do whatever it takes to get to their goals in order to be the creatures that control others, that would demonize others. They would basically give up on their principles when it relates to that person. But in public, this person is educated, this person is smart, this person is very, coming in with a good appearance. This person is so good in speech. They're so eloquent. They know how to flip all the arguments and flip completely, make us completely different narrative, etc. So you really want to be careful. You really want to be careful. And that's why you want to make sure that you don't fall in these loopholes right there. Just because somebody's educated does not mean that they're understanding. Just because somebody is rich does not mean that they actually will be these hospitable people. And just because somebody may appear religious, it doesn't mean that they really are putting religion as the principle that they would be living based off. So just to keep in mind those things. I've seen many people that they would be giving these beautiful khutbahs that people would be crying from, and their wives would be calling me, complaining about the horrible akhlaq that they would have at home, the horrible akhlaq, and how selfish they would be. at home with their own wives or with their own children, and then what happens is that this person was using religion as a way to polish their image in order to get to their their interests, but they really did not carry the religion. They just carried a certain image of a religion to get to their interest. And you really want to be careful with that. And that's why I would say, hey, listen, it's not what you put as a profile, but it's actually the background check that you would do. And even that background check may fail to see what this person really is like until an actual relationship / marriage takes place. This is extremely important. So even that, many will pass and many know how to create a completely different image of themselves and when they deal with this person. Now, another thing I would say, in terms of profiles, just because somebody is good looking doesn't mean that they are really going to be fulfilling your needs. And you understand what I mean. Just because she appears really good looking or he appears really good looking, it doesn't mean that they're going to be the ones that will really give you the fulfillment that you would need, whether in words and emotions, in perhaps even, let's say, in relationship, and you know what I mean, all of that. Just because somebody is good looking doesn't mean that. So how do I put all these different things that I would want to put on a profile, at least create my own profile? What do I look for in a husband? Before you say, this is what I look for in a husband, I want you to first say, who am I? Who am I? What am I? What am I like? You first have to know who you are, what you are, and then you would say, okay, this is what I need to help me with this. This is what I am, and this is what I need. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is just because you can put these profiles on paper and you can say, I want this, because you imagine a very, what is the word that I could use, a very utopian image of what basically a life that you had hoped to live. That's not necessarily what you would need to put on as a profile. Those are two different things. The profile, and I want him to be cheerful. I want him to be a person that is, I don't know, six-pack, a person that cares about health and healthy food. And I want him to be a person that is this. There, a lot of times what you put on a profile, those are things that anybody can and anybody can say, well, yeah, I fit that description. I'm very funny. And then you would say that, what are you talking about? You have nothing to do with funny. And that's why it's important when you write the profile, it's important that you would consider that there are certain things that you have to investigate and don't put it on the profile. You see, when it's, I'll compare these two things, okay? When a girl writes a profile, okay, and a boy writes a profile, the girl usually puts a lot of things. So she will probably put maybe 10 things that she wants on the profile. The man may write 3 things, 4 things. And guess what? Even in terms of words, the boy or the guy might max maybe give me, I don't know, a couple sentences, literally just a couple sentences. I want her female within this age group, basically beautiful, always focused on the beautiful part of it, this much, this height, within this height, and basically maybe social status, want her to be married, not married, etc. So we have to focus on that. And the irony, I know this is a little sidetrack, okay? Almost 90% of the guys will give a profile photo of them wearing sunglasses, to the point that we had to put it on the profile when they would put their profile image. Do not give us a profile, a photo with glasses on, sunglasses on. 90% of the guys will give us photos with sunglasses on. Why? I don't know. Yet the girls, on the other hand, will most of the times make a pose that, I would say a pose that is perhaps a photo that you would see on a 17 magazine, or probably those types of Hollywood poses, etc. And guess what? When a guy sees that, they would think that this is intimidating. I'm not saying that guys would think. The girls would think that this is going to be intimidating. It'd be interesting to really read and see, what do guys see in this picture? What do girls see in this picture? Okay. In exactly the same way that I would tell the girls, hey, guys don't necessarily want to see a pose where you are posing for somehow, bringing attraction, because he's looking to get married and not looking to, unless he really doesn't have a good intention. A girlfriend, he'd be looking for a pose like that. But for a wife, he's looking for a decent pose. Okay. On the other hand, for guys, they would think by wearing sunglasses that's making you look attractive and cool and like a Hollywood star. No, it doesn't. When you have your face appearing and 30% of it we cannot see, that is extremely, I don't know what to call it, absolutely not a photo that basically reveals what you look like. When you have 30% of your face basically covered in huge sunglasses, that does not make you look attractive, because you just gave me a photo that covers most of what makes your photo. That doesn't make a photo. Anyhow, so the same way, I wanted to use the photo part because I wanted to also say this speaks a lot of what we see on profile. This speaks a lot where girls think that by putting more about themselves, about how they are probably attractive, they are probably funny, they are probably maybe looking for 1, 2, 3. They're probably looking for 1, 2, 3 things, and etc. And they would put a lot about what they're looking for. That's a shutdown for guys. The second that you put a lot of things that you're looking for guys, they don't want to read a long list that you would put up a profile. It's just swipe. That's how he sees it. Oh, there's so much to read, swipe. Girls, on the other hand, when if a guy writes just a couple lines, she's gonna swipe. It's like, oh, there's not much said here, because she's looking for a lot of information. A girl's looking for a lot of information, and guys would really limit it. And guys don't want a lot of information, so girls would end up really writing long profiles, and they don't know that that's a shutdown for guys. The other thing is that the second that you think that by putting in all these descriptions that you're necessarily going to get these descriptions, is not necessarily the case. Just because you are in a matchmaking, matchmaking website, and you think that, hey, I mean, they have 30,000 profiles. Somebody's going to fit this one. But guess what? You're going to use some math, and you're going to consider that, let's say you say you wanted PhD, for example. Okay, I always look at the PhD because of education level. People would, say PhD, and we have that a lot. We would say people that are looking for, let's say, PhD. But guess what, ladies, this is just working in matchmaking for 12 years. I'll tell you one thing. Okay. We have had more women that were extremely educated and within the age of 33 and above looking to get married. And of course, because she wanted somebody that matches her qualification, she would basically put in, let's say, a higher qualification of what she might have wanted. Okay. But here's one thing that you want to keep in mind, that when you think that by putting, yes, he needs to be PhD, he needs to be rich, he needs to have a stable job, etc., you want to keep in mind that those people that are 33 and above, many of those guys had already gotten married. Okay. So you want to keep in mind those numbers. A lot of those guys have already gotten married, and a lot of these guys are looking to make a stable home and not make a company. What do I mean by a company? It's like, okay, there's a huge difference between putting a profile for marriage and putting a profile for, I don't know, getting employed. Huge difference. Okay. What type of degrees you had studied and what you basically had achieved in terms of your employment life or in terms of your degree life, that's not what a man is looking for. A man is looking for to make family. Okay. And that's the consideration that one more and you're out. So a man is looking for to get married, and certainly the woman is looking to get married too. But you want to keep in mind that when you look for to get married, you want to keep in mind that what you would see on a profile, PhD, works at this company, etc., that does not necessarily guarantee that person really carries what it means to bring about stability in your marriage, or what it means to bring about all of that you are looking for. In other words, I would say certainly it's a lot harder for women. There's no question. It's a lot harder for women to look for the right matching spouse than it is for men. There is no question about that. Why? Because at the end of the day, he's the leader of the household. It's a lot easier for him to just say, well, this didn't work out, and then just walk away. But for her, it's not going to be that easy. There's no question about that. Even if somebody wanted to say, oh, come on, you're exaggerating. All you need to see before you get into marriage, all you need to see is the aftermath. Those that would come in for marriage counseling. Guys don't want to come for marriage counseling. They don't want to come for, it's always the woman that's coming in to say, hey, I need marriage counseling. Women are more concerned about making their marriages work than men. Men, that's it. It's not working. I've tried whatever. And they don't want anybody, even if it's a marriage counselor, to come in and actually give them these tips or these recommendations, because they would feel that this is trespassing their territory, and they don't want that. But we would always get women coming in and saying, hey, I want my marriage to work out. Here's what I had done. Here's what's happening. Please help me. And they would, whether it's a marriage counselor, like a licensed marriage counselor, or whether it's a sheikh, it's always the woman that is concerned about making this work. That's why I'm saying that when we look at marriages and what is on your profile, it's extremely important to keep in mind that that definitely it's a lot harder for you, and you would have to review the numbers out there. Just because somebody may look like a certain profile it doesn't mean they really match it on ground. And just because you put certain things on the profile, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what makes a stable marriage. What is my recommendation? My recommendation, before you accept anybody and before you put in all these different things as basically the pragmatic, let me call it this way, pragmatic qualifications on a profile, you want to remember that asking about the person's background is more important than what you see on that profile. What really is that person like? And a person can be the most charming person, the most loving person, because that's what you're going to be living with. You're not going to be living with a degree. You're not going to be living with whatever, all that social status and all these different things and all of those appearances. What you're really going to be living with is this person having that integrity? Is this person capable of covering what would bring about a stable home? So we're talking about stable home, whether paying the expenses, do they really have a good money management? Do they really know how to put these resources in place? Do they really know how to make the right decisions? Do they really care about people's feelings? Do they really care about how to do all that management in terms of anger management, all of that? That's what really matters under that roof. That's what really matters under that roof. Having a person that is gonna, I don't know, have you live in a mansion, but cannot even say a nice word to make you feel important. What good does it do? So it's a mansion, but it's empty of life. Really? You can be living in a very simple home, but be very happy with this person because they really show love. They really show care. They really show that it's a small amount of probably money. Maybe it's just not much. We don't have a lot of things. We're struggling to probably pay our bills or struggling to do this, but we compromise a lot of things because what really matters to us is the value and not the value of our relationship, the value of him, the value of me. That's what makes us happy, and not necessarily all that materialistic thing that people might actually think of it as that's what brings happiness. Now, this is extremely important to keep in mind. So my recommendation, yes, choose deen. And what I mean by deen, not the appearance of a beard and not the appearance of a thobe and not the appearance of somebody memorized the Quran. No, deen is really living the akhlaq of a deen. I had seen people that I would say taught me deen in al-Masjid al-Aqsa more than my professors had taught me on university campus and studying Kulliyat al-Sharia. In studying Kulliyat al-Sharia, yes, my professors, great professors, very proud of them. But when it comes to really having taqwa, I had seen very simple people have better taqwa than some of my professors. Have the most spiritual relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than a lot of those that might carry all these degrees. So when we say somebody that is religious, we mean a person that really carries their religion as in their heart and not a facade, an appearance that they would somehow appear in. That's the most important thing you want to look for. And akhlaq. Deen and akhlaq. Wallahi, those are the most important things. All the other things on the profile, I would say those are definitely a plus. If somebody has probably an education, definitely a plus. But remember, education does not necessarily guarantee understanding. Definitely during our times, education is going to mean a lot in terms of, hey, there's their money and how much they're making. And that's going to determine a lot about if she's going to be working and he's going to be working. It's going to determine a lot about how much of a struggle this is going to be. Definitely. I'm not saying take somebody that is poor. Yes, money does matter and it matters a lot, but don't make that as your main focus. Don't be too pragmatic, and be realistic. And definitely be realistic in what you want to look for. Don't be too utopian and think that, oh, if I put that on and by the way, ladies, I think the most profiles that we got coming in our matchmaking in our matchmaking years, we had more women with PhDs and master's degrees than women that didn't have that. And guess what? Many times people would think that this is what a man looks for. And it's like, yeah, I've got a PhD in this. Men are not necessarily afraid of a PhD. They're not necessarily afraid of that. But what that makes them afraid is this person going to prioritize their degree, going to prioritize their job over their family? That's what worries them. You know, the feminists would tell you, oh, they're afraid of educated women. They're not afraid of educated women. There's nothing scary about an educated woman except one thing. If she is prioritizing a certain social status, whether that is, because right now degrees, sorry, it's not a reflection of how much you know. Degrees, college degrees, they're more of a social status than anything else. A social status more than anything else. They don't necessarily reflect how much you know. They don't necessarily reflect how successful you are. They don't necessarily reflect how you manage your priorities. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. And that's why it's extremely important to keep that in mind, that many, many times, you know, the guys would look into, oh, a PhD. It's like, oh, that's a turn off for many, because they would consider when she is 36 years old or 37 years old and okay, has a PhD, but she's getting really close to her menopause, her menopause. And right now, okay, her chances of getting children is basically becoming slimmer. Ladies, there's a reality that we all don't want to know. There's a biological clock that is completely different than a man's biological clock. You just have to keep that one in mind. We all don't want to know about it. I know we hate it, but there's a reality that you have to keep in mind. All that feminist rhetoric in wanting you to, yes, compete and get a job and get your degree to get a better chance of getting a job, etc. And then by the time that you get your degree, by the time you get your job and you're probably successful at your job and you probably have a stable income, then you think that, oh, now I want to look for a husband, or now I want to get married. Guess what? You've got a biological clock. By then, you probably are already, right now, by default, the number of guys that would match your profile already getting smaller every single year that passes. There's a reality. We don't want to know this. We don't want anybody to tell us this because it is hurtful. I know it's hurtful. I'm a woman like you. I got married at 27. I know it's not fun to hear. I know how it feels when somebody is telling me this as a woman, that, you know, it's like, wait a minute, Are you here laying out this information to tell me that I'm not wanted? I'm not telling you you're not wanted, but I'm just letting us know that if you are within, let's say, the category of course, you're going to keep in consideration, of course, your culture. This may be true in certain cultures, but not true in other cultures. If you're in your 20s, the number of guys that would match what you're looking for in your profile may be 60%. Okay. Why? Because the guys didn't get yet married. Okay. They're still, hey, within your age group, 20, 20, 25, 26, 27, within your age group, you would be basically on that list. But then, oh, you basically are part of this group, or probably within this probably culture, probably that, then that's going to basically slim your option a little smaller. And then, oh, you added this profile. Oh, your father also wants this. Oh, then what are you going to do? Then you're going to look at the percentage of each and every single restriction that you and your family are putting, and that's going to tell you the percentage, or at least the probability, of you getting this lucky number. And certainly you want to go up in numbers if you are between the age of, let's say, 28 and probably between 28 and 35. Then again, you're going to look at another number here, another category. Then if you're going 35 and probably 40, now you're at another category. You're going to look at these categories, and this is a reality. So the higher you go up in your category, the more you need to recommend, you need to take in consideration that what you need to put on your profile, a lot of it that needs to be basically, let's say, evaluated, and you really need to stick to very less conditions and restrictions on that profile, because you're not going to have that many. And a lot of times, oh, she's looking for this. Okay, cancel out. I'm not like that. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Okay. And they'll just swipe it. They'll literally just swipe it. It's like you're the society had gotten so used to swiping reels and shorts and all of that, that to them, swiping people is basically going in the same way. They won't even look. It's like, oh, next, next, next. No, that's it. That's how fast they'll swipe a profile. That's how fast, literally, like that. You as a matchmaker, you probably maybe worked way harder in looking at a profile than the amount of time that it took this guy or that girl to look into the profile. Same thing with girls. They could swipe, but guess what? It takes the girls longer to swipe an image than the boys to swipe an image. The girl is willing to look at the image, I would say, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes before she would swipe. The boy, wallahi, seconds. Swipe, seconds, didn't even look at it. Seconds. And you're like, you didn't even read the profile. Yeah, not my type. That's it. Seconds. I don't know why. I don't know how. It would be really interesting to see a specialist in neurology and a psychology to really see, well, wallahi, seconds. It's just a second right there. But a girl would look and read, and she would take every single profile so seriously, and way more seriously than the guys. Okay. Now, anyhow, what I want to say is that my best recommendation is, before I would talk about what to put on the profile and how to read those profiles, I would say learn more about who you are and learn about the circumstances right now that you are probably younger than when you are older, and know that the more you put restrictions on the profile, the less people are going to be coming. So my recommendation, don't necessarily put a restriction, except Islam and piety and deen. That's it. let that be as your main profile. And then certainly when people are coming in, that's when you would cancel out one after another based on, let's call it, the complex dynamic of how these profiles would come in and connect with each other. And guess what? A lot of times, what you see in that profile, when you know the person in person and you see the combination of how these things basically added up in that person, it makes a completely different thing. Completely different thing. My recommendation, stick to deen and stick to akhlaq. All the other things on the profile, when they come in, you would say definitely person with stable job, there's no question about that. But when they come in and basically, let's say, lay out how these things basically fit that person and how they basically connected these dots together, that's when you would see a completely different profile. Completely different profile. When those things, they would connect in that person. This person is completely different than a silent image or words. And it's really funny, especially people coming from, I know this is going to sound, please don't, from certain Asian countries, let's say you say it this way. They would think that in order to really appear attractive, that they would have to put these really hard words. They would literally probably get a dictionary and put these really hard words to make themselves appear somehow educated, when it didn't really need much to say, perhaps you wanted to say cheerful. Fair enough, you can say cheerful. But to put me a word that I need to go to the dictionary to see, well, what word, and what does that even mean? Or probably use ChatGPT to write your own profile. That is too, what is the word that I can use? But that's one, too cheap. That does not work. That, yes, it may attract, but just be yourself. Just be yourself. Be transparent. That's marriage. That's not a job interview. It's when it's marriage, it's just be yourself. Don't fake it. Do not fake it. Just be yourself. And definitely, you don't want to expose everything about yourself, but just be yourself. And don't create a fake image of yourself thinking that that's going to be intimidating. No, be yourself, but not to the point that you make a fool of yourself. Okay, I'm not saying make a fool of yourself, and definitely don't be over transparent, but definitely don't exaggerate in somehow thinking that if I make myself more appealing, that I'm going to be getting to what I'm looking for. I had found that when people are simple, with no takalluf, no faking, transparent, that they are more likely to, one, get to what they want. Number two, they're more likely to be victims. Many people that are looking for their praise, they can get to this. So you really want to be careful. Don't overdo it in being too much of yourself. Don't overdo it and say, well, this is what I truly am, and I want to just be myself. I don't mean by being yourself and making a fool out of yourself. I want you to be smart. Definitely put your wali on board. Definitely be wise, and definitely, take this seriously. And at the same time, don't fake it. Don't fake it and thinking that, oh, I will, get to a better profile if I were to present myself in such ways. We did talk about seeing the girl wanting to propose to, how much can he see from the woman, preponderant ruling. We talked about that. Can they see each other more than once? We did say that there was no limit to the number of citations. So we made that one clear. But certainly we definitely have to take in consideration that this person is really serious about marriage. This person is taking the matter definitely not as sightseeing, and definitely taking consideration that they're coming with the intention of marriage and not the intention of creating relationships. Being alone with the fiance. Here's the question. Now, it's important to take in consideration that this person is not yet considered a spouse. And therefore, just by the family, even if the father basically said, yes, we're going to make this happen, this person, we're approving him, but that approval is not the approval in a marriage consent. In other words, it's not giving consent as in a marriage contract, but this is consent as a promise that, yes, we're going to walk through this marriage and make it happen, or we're approving this person for this. Now, here's the thing. Does that mean that this is a marriage contract? The answer is no. A marriage contract, in order for it to be valid, there are 4 different things that must be there. Number 1 is that the marriage contract, well, if it's a man, if it's a woman, let's say it this way, the man has to be Muslim, okay? If it's a man, then the woman has to be either a Muslim, Christian, or Jew, but we're going to have some more details about a non-Muslim woman and what the conditions are in that situation. But number 2, for a marriage to take place, there has to be the ijab wal qabul, that's what it's called, basically the consent from both sides. But we're talking also the consent, the wali's consent, the father's consent, or the wali, whoever is basically coming after the father in that situation. So that would be the wali's consent. The other thing that would be extremely important to talk about, which is the actual wording of marriage. Okay, what does that mean? So consent in a marriage contract is not given in a way that, yeah, okay, sure, we're just right there, just gathering together. No, there has to be this quote and what is equivalent to it. Zawajtuka binti, I got my daughter married to you, and it would be coming out of the wali. And zawajtuka binti, let's say Suad, on this amount of mahar, and the other guy immediately would say qabilt. That's the actual wording of marriage. Or wahabtuka, scholars discussed different wordings, but this is what makes a marriage. Zawajtuka binti Suad, and on such mahar. Or even zawajtuka binti Suad, and the guy says qabilt, even without mentioning a mahar. Okay, zawajtuka binti Suad, and he says qabilt. And we had 2 witnesses witnessing this. And we had basically, of course, Muslim, that, let's just say they were both Muslim. Okay, then that's what makes a valid marriage contract. 2 witnesses, consent, the actual wording, the wali, and they're Muslim. That's a valid marriage contract. What about the wedding? Differences of opinions between scholars on whether we have to have a wedding or not. Malikis, they regarded you have to have a wedding. That's the actual that's the actual witness. Other scholars, they said, well, no, that's a ishad, announcing the marriage, that's not what makes a marriage contract valid or not, but what would be an additional requirement. So they considered it as the marriage contract is valid, meaning that's not zina. Okay, but When we don't have all of that, then there's no marriage contract. This fiance is considered a complete not husband and certainly not a mahram, and therefore this person is like any other man on the street. Therefore, even if he's called a fiance, that does not mean she can be alone with him, or they could go out together, drink coffee, or probably, I don't know, go to an ice cream place. Absolutely not. Or even be alone in one of these rooms at even if it's her parents' house and they're exchanging romantic talk. Absolutely haram. Absolutely haram. The Prophet ﷺ said, any man that sits alone with a woman is, we're talking about a woman that's not a mahram. We're not talking about a man, a brother with his sister, or a brother with his, or a son with his mother. No, we're talking about a man with any other woman that is not his mahram, that is not his wife. The shaitan would be the third. The shaitan would be the third. And definitely, just by being engaged, that is nothing but a word of promise. Therefore, they cannot exchange romantic talk. They cannot exchange or be in a place where they are alone. And even if they're probably talking to each other over the phone, or probably on WhatsApp, or probably on social media, they cannot exchange these kind of emojis to basically say I love you or whatever it is, or heart, or an emoji with a face and with a heart coming out of their mouth, or etc. Absolutely haram. I just sent an emoji. Yeah, you know what that means. This is a fitna. This is haram. This is absolutely haram. Only between a husband and wife, such emojis can be exchanged. Only. So a communication, any communication that goes beyond the, let's call it that relationship of making the final statement. So what does that mean? So are we just, we're just talking to each other? Yeah, we gave the engagement. We're engaged now right now. Can we talk to each other and basically say for hours, yeah, today I woke up and I did this and I did that? No, that's not part of making the final the final decision. So what does an engagement? An engagement is all about one thing. Are you right now coming to a final decision that you're interested in continuing this marriage? Yes or no? If yes, okay, let's wait until we do the marriage contract. No communication, no exchanging calls and for hours and talking to each other. No, we're going to wait. You made the final decision. He's the person you're interested in getting married to? Yes. Okay, fair enough. No more calls, no more relationships, no more visitations until we do a marriage contract. So what about the engagement of, we just want to know each other more? You want to know each other more in terms of what? In terms of what? Oh, if we really click. Oh, right now, what type of clicking? You absolutely clicked. You sat together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and you know that he's the person that you were wanting to get married to. He also did the same thing. You made the final decision that you guys are interested. Okay, now we go to stage 2. Marriage contract. But other than that, in exchanging yes, and I want to see if I fully get into this love, romantic, flowery things. That's not permissible. That's not what Islam considers as yes, qualification in هل نظرت إليها فانظر إليها فإنه حرام أن يؤدم بينكما. No, this isn't talking about a romantic relationship. This is not talking about a romantic relationship. This is exceeding the limits. Okay, this is exceeding the limit. Let's see. The sister is saying, what about this culture, Sheikha, where people just say, we just want to see the girl and only inform you an hour or two before? What about her integrity? wait a minute, I'm confused. So you mean, are you talking about integrity or are you talking about dignity? Okay, I think you're talking about dignity, not integrity. Okay, let's see. Um, can they inform the girl an hour or two before? Um, let's say a guy is interested in asking for a girl's hand in marriage, okay? And and let's say he sees her on college campus. And what I mean by sees her on college campus, I'm not talking about, talking to her on college campus. Okay. But, he's going to class A and he sees her walking, going to class B. Or let's say they're both in class A. And he's basically seeing the way she speaks. He's basically seeing, you know, the way that she behaves on college campus. And he was interested. He's seen that she's not a girl that is, talking to these guys out there. She's a girl that is focused on school. She's a girl, a good deen, good akhlaq, applying and wearing her hijab beautifully. He definitely sees a girl that is of good deen, let's say. Okay. And then he had also seen that, hey, even with her hijab, he could see an amount of beauty. And, he's interested in asking for her hand. Is that permissible, even without her knowing that he's basically overseeing and basically watching as she goes and as she comes, and he's basically looking from far and just, let's say, looking from far and just watching her. Okay, that's permissible. Only on a condition that it is with the intention of marriage and not, yeah, I'm just watching this girl and yeah, I'm liking her. No, only with the intention of marriage. And what if she doesn't know about it? That's permissible. Okay. Let's see. What is the appropriate way to go about in courting stage? Okay. So it depends on the culture. I don't think I can I can answer that one because, if you were to look in the Arabic culture, it's completely different than perhaps maybe Western culture, perhaps maybe African culture, perhaps Pakistani or Indian, Asian culture, Malaysian culture. Every single culture has their own way of doing this courting thing. So I don't want to use my own culture as the default that people are supposed to be using. There are certain, there isn't a specific way, and this is really left to people's cultures and how they would want to do it with a certain restriction. Let's see, if the girl's sister says the boy has a good character and a job but doesn't pray, and that it's the girl's test to guide him towards deen, and if the girl resists, the sister tells her to find someone herself, what should the girl do? That sister is definitely not qualified. Meaning the sister that says, oh, it's your job to basically guide him and towards the deen. Absolutely not. You look for a person to have deen before you would even get into marriage. Okay, because you can give this guidance to a person for 20 years or 15 years, and if the person, who knows when they're going to let this guidance get into their heart. You're looking for a compatible person and not for a person to be now your place of da'wah activism. No, I'm looking for a compatible person to raise the children. Right now, we're in a project. Not that he becomes my place of project. But if he's going to become my place of project for da'wah, then I'm in a dilemma here. I'm right now in a project, in this institution of marriage, in a project to make children that are right now taking their father as a good example for their deen, and me taking him as a person that would guide me through the deen. This is not a person that I'm still going to use that as my place of project. My place of project of dawah is probably, hey, maybe I'm doing maybe a booth and giving dawah there, or probably giving a dars at the masjid. That's a different project. I'll see these people. Whoever accepts my dawah, congratulations. Whoever doesn't accept the dawah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yahdihum. But if I'm getting into a marriage project, but now I have to get into another project, which is to give him da'wah, oh man, that's a huge dilemma. What if he doesn't accept it? What am I going to do? My life is at risk. My children are at risk. Am I going to put that right now as, oh, now what do I need to do? So absolutely not. This person, there are certain deal breakers. Piety, religion, akhlaq, and certain akhlaq are deal breakers. There are certain things that are deal breakers, no question about it. We can probably negotiate maybe money, we can negotiate a job, we can negotiate degree, we can negotiate beauty, we can negotiate a place of residency, we can negotiate maybe social status, we can negotiate on each and every single one. But deen is a deal breaker. If this person is not taking their deen seriously, but they have very handsome, very charming, they've got the money, they've got the good degrees, they've got everything that, hey, in materialistic, on the materialistic ground, they have it all, but deen they don't have, that's a deal breaker. That's a deal breaker. Because if I'm right there in this institution and in this marriage relationship, and I can't even be compatible with this person in deen. What do I mean by compatible? If I'm saying that this is haram, and we both know that this is haram, not a place of differences of opinions between scholars, but something that we know is haram. But he's insisting that he wants to do it. And that if I don't give it to him, I don't do, and I don't succumb, and I don't obey him in whatever haram thing that he wants, he gets angry. He's going to make my life miserable. But if he recognizes that, no, deen is a border, and I'm not going to trespass it. Because guess what? You're going to eventually be risking your deen. Why? Because you want to make your marriage work, and you're going to find yourself that in order to make him satisfied, to make him happy, I have to jeopardize and risk my deen because that's the only thing that would make him happy. If a person is wanting to make himself happy at the expense of deen, then trust me, he's going to pressure you to give up on your deen to serve his happiness too. So deen is a deal breaker. Certain akhlaq, certain mannerisms are deal breakers. Anger. If this person has an issue of anger management, that's a deal breaker. Violence, deal breaker. Deal breaker. This person, he can get angry and start throwing everything and start, hey, maybe attacking you. That's a deal breaker. Selfishness, deal breaker. Just a deal breaker. Because if this person, to him, money is more valuable than everything, a deal breaker. Certain things are deal breakers. I'd be interested in knowing what to you is a deal breaker. But in terms of akhlaq, you could say that these akhlaq that I had just mentioned, there are a lot of hadith that support that these are deal breakers. But I'll just make the story short. Be interesting to what you think a deal breaker is. Let's see. If the proposal, here's another question. If the proposal is coming from such people, can she refuse to meet them? She doesn't want everybody to just come and say and go. She suffered a lot of humiliation in this process. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If somebody is, you already know that they're deal breakers, they don't have the deen, absolutely. Don't even sit with the person. It's a deal breaker. Nope, you'll get the person. There are certain deal breakers. Yes, stand your ground and say, sorry, but this is a deal breaker. If this person doesn't even pray, deal breaker on the spot. If this person is not taking their religion seriously, deal breaker on the spot without even sitting with this person. No need to sit with this person. You have your dignity. You've got your deen to basically consider that you know exactly what to look for. There are certain deal breakers. No need to question. If this person doesn't even pray, that's a deal breaker. Okay, let's see. If a man or a woman know that they won't be interested in this person, they're not permitted to see this person. So that's exactly what you're asking about. If you know that you're not going to be interested in this person because they don't pray, well, that's a deal breaker. Then in that situation, it would be impermissible for you to even sit with them because you already know the answer beforehand. Okay, but here's one thing. Let's say somehow you were pressured. You were pressured and you didn't know how to get out of it, and who knows, some situation. Just lower your gaze and I'm not interested. Okay, can someone look on the person's behalf? I mean, every person has their own eye. Women may see on this man's behalf. So what does that look like? Let me give you the scenario. Let's just say she didn't want to take the Hanbali opinion in what can appear in the situation where they approved one another. So she wanted to take the opinion that I want to take the Maliki and the majority opinion, and I don't want to take off my hijab, and I don't want to appear the way that I would appear in front of my mahrams, like the Hanbalis would say. And no, I want to be on the safe side. And then, though the man insisted, I would like to see her hair, I would like to see more about her physique, etc. So then she basically insisted, well, he can send his mother. She can come over and she can see, she probably let his mother see how long her hair is, whether it's a coarse hair, nice hair, straight hair, whatever it is, or perhaps maybe her physique, whether she is probably maybe extra weight or not extra weight, or what exactly is he really looking for. So in that situation, he can send another one of his mahrams to actually describe this woman. But here's the question. To describe the woman, is it permissible to describe the woman to this man, or can she describe it? Well, if, let's say, the man's father is sitting down and she's basically, hey, mom came back and she said, okay, here's the description. And they're like his, I don't know, 6 brothers sitting down and the father sitting down, and she's basically describing it. That's haram. You describe it. You describe that appearance, that woman's appearance, to only the man that is basically intended, not to everyone else. So let's say it's, I don't know, Ahmed that's interested, just describe it to Ahmed. Ahmed, can I have a conversation with you? That's basically, I'm the mother. Ahmed, this is what she looks like. This is what I had seen. What else do you want me to describe? And that way, that's how, whether the majority of the scholars, okay, they had said that this is what can be described. What about, let's say, the Hanbalis? The Hanbalis, they said that she can appear not from the first session, of course, but appear after they are, at least they had done their homework in asking about this person, seen this person's integrity, they're really serious about marriage, etc. Then in that situation, after that evaluation, then she can appear the way she would appear in front of her mahrams. That's according to the Hanbali method. Okay, so can a man look on his behalf? Well, definitely not a man. So in other words, his brother, he's sending his brother because he's probably, I don't know, maybe in a different country, and say, my brother Uthman, I want you to go and check out that woman for me and see if she's the right fit for me. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You can send another woman, but not another man. Okay, How much can he see from, how much can she see? Now we're talking about the woman see from the man. Women are as men. She's attracted to looks just like he's attracted to looks. And of course, the hadiths that we're speaking of men looking at women include women also looking at men and seeing if they're compatible with what they would also desire. So, of course, but we're not looking at the level of seeing up to perhaps the private part. Okay, that's should be so. Okay. So we're speaking about definitely not including that extent, but we're talking about, of course, because a man's private part is all the way from the knees to the belly button, okay, or the navel to the knees, and different opinions between scholars in terms of thigh and how much from the thigh. So just let you know about that one, okay. But at the end, of course, she definitely has the right to reject a man because he's overweight or because he doesn't appear in the appearance that she had hoped that he would appear in. Okay, what if he or she didn't like the other person's appearance? Well, I mean, they have to preserve each other's privacies. And definitely, you don't necessarily want to say what you didn't like about the person because you don't want to hurt that other person's feelings. You're not interested, just say, okay, not my type. That's enough to say, not my type. And rather than hurt the other person's feelings and probably that will get to them, she's not your type, just say she's not your type. And that's basically that simple. And without getting into all those details that may be hurtful. Okay, so any questions about that one before we get to engagement and its rulings? I could see, and his father. Oh, absolutely. The father, let's see, if the proposal is coming from such people, can she refuse to meet them? Okay, what about the father? So even if the father is not a mahram to her, so even the father, uh, he should not be hearing the description of that woman, at least in terms of physical description. Okay, let's continue with engagement and its rulings. A lot to say about this one. So I'm going to get to a couple issues that we're going to talk about right here. Number one, what is an engagement? Well, engagement really just means asking for someone's hand in marriage. In other words, making the proposal and or introducing someone to marriage. So when we say engagement, we're talking about introducing someone to marriage from someone else. Okay. Um, so whether we're speaking about proposal or whether we're speaking about asking and giving the consent for the actual, basically for the actual process to happen. So this isn't necessarily giving a final consent about the marriage, but this is just giving a consent for the actual process that we're approving, and giving the initial approval for this marriage. Okay, so that's basically what it means. Asking for a woman's hand, of course, figuratively in marriage. Yes, I had to say figuratively. And in general, cultures feel more comfortable with a man asking for a woman's hand in marriage, which is preferable not in the religion, but culture and psychological wise in many cases. Okay, why am I even saying that? Okay, here's the thing. It is permissible. We're gonna see that it is permissible for a woman to ask for a man's hand in marriage, figuratively. We're gonna talk about that in just a bit. But when we say it's preferable, not necessarily in religion, but in culture, in many cultures, even in Western culture, it's really the man that is coming in to show desire to the woman, and the woman is basically consenting or not, and not usually the other way. But the question is, can it be done in the other way around? Okay, is a woman allowed to ask for the man's hand in marriage? Okay, let's break it down. So scholars and salihin throughout history, okay, have basically introduced their daughters to certain, let's say, good salihin men. Let's give the story. Prophet Musa عليه السلام, by that salih person, he was told, قال إني أريد أن أنكحك إحدى ابنتي هاتين على أن تأجرني 8 حجج فإن أتممت ب10 فمن عندك. And of course, we know the story, how that man from the tribe of Madian, how he introduced his daughter, or at least daughters, 2 daughters, one of them, to basically introduce them to Prophet Musa in order for him to get married to one of them. Okay, and certainly did Prophet Musa alayhi salam ask for her hand in marriage? The answer is no. But the father had seen his integrity, had seen his qualifications, and decided, this would be a perfect match for my good daughter. Okay, just like Prophet Musa alayhi salam. And this. So scholars then debated if this is permissible in our legislation or not. But we could see that the scholars that said and got the inspiration from this ayah, they said, well, that's not the only story, but we had seen Umar ibn al-Khattab introduced his daughter Hafsa to Uthman, Abu Bakr, and later to the Prophet ﷺ. So, of course, we could say that, hey, Umar al-Khattab introduces, the Prophet ﷺ didn't object to that. And we could see other cases where, let's go farther. Mughni al-Muhtaj, although a Shafi'i book, but I wanted to quote this one. He said, يُسَنُّ لِلْوَلِيِّ عرض وليته على ذوي الصلاح كما فعل شعيب موسى وعمر بعثمان ثم بأبي بكر. He said, it is a sunnah that a wali would introduce his daughter to pious men, as Prophet Shu'aib had done. By the way, he said as Prophet Shu'aib, but there isn't actually an agreement that it was Prophet Shu'aib. So just to note that it was a salih man from Madian, but not necessarily Prophet Shu'aib. But at the end is that this salih man basically introduces his daughters. And Umar ibn Khattab had done the same. So let's go farther. Can a woman herself actually propose in person? Let's look at this. 2 women companions introduced themselves to the Prophet ﷺ. They introduced themselves. Let's look at this hadith. He basically said, I was with Anas. And he had a daughter. And Anas said that a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she introduced herself to the Prophet ﷺ and said, are you in need of me? And the daughter of Anas ibn Malik, she said, ما أقل حياءها وسوءته. What a woman that lacks bashfulness. And certainly, what a shame. What a shame. So Anas responds, she's better than you. She was interested in the Prophet ﷺ, so she introduced herself to him. You could see this hadith is narrated in al-Bukhari. Okay, so what does that mean? So what we get out of this hadith, in fact, al-Bukhari, and there was a quote, فقه البخاري في تراجمه, في التراجم. What does that mean? Al-Bukhari basically had his fiqh. How do we know with this fiqh? Basically, it's in the labels, the title, the way that he had titled his chapters. And he said, Bab عرض المرأة نفسها على الرجل الصالح. In order for this woman to propose for this man, I personally would say, don't, especially during our time when people lacked integrity, and sometimes you don't really know whether this person is really serious or is he interested or that, and you don't want to really get hurt by him rejecting you. I would really recommend having a third person. If you were to let your father help you through the process, that would definitely be a better recommendation. Rather than you taking it in your own hands and going to this person, and then this person coming over and so forth, then probably maybe getting hurt if he's rejecting. Certainly the way that women, when they are rejected, the way that they handle it is completely different than the way men handle rejection. Men can handle rejection way better than a woman can handle rejection. A woman, the way when she is rejected, she's way more hurt. And certainly we see that this woman came to the Prophet ﷺ to ask for his hand in marriage. And like we said, al-Bukhari had said, ala rajul salih, on the pious man. So it isn't any man, let me propose to this man. Absolutely not. That's number one. Number two, I would definitely recommend, in the era of people lacking integrity, find a third person. Let them make it as if it is spontaneous, as if it is, that this other person is suggesting you to them rather than you directly coming to this person. If, let's say, this third person basically said, hey, I think you might actually have somebody that is a good match for you. Did you think of X or Y basically in marriage? And let's say he says, oh, it's not my time. It's definitely way better than this person telling it in your face that you're not his type, and etc. Then that would definitely be very hurtful. And let's just say this girl wanted to say, well, I want to do it the way this woman did, and this person is a salih person. Let's say she did it that way. You basically would somehow deliver the message that you were interested, not keep on tracking, not keep on asking, not keep on going after this person and why this, and probably emailing and probably calling and probably WhatsApping and probably no, that's it. That would be haram. That's it. Message was delivered. That's it. You don't keep on stalking. Don't keep on trying to trace, trying to figure out how to get around and how to get this approval. Know your value. Consider your dignity. When you are put and you put yourself out in the market for free, people don't take you as of value. People don't take you as of value. Just keep that one in mind. So in other words, if you let another third person come in, that will bring and keep your integrity and keep your dignity. Sorry, not integrity, but your deen and your dignity in place. Let's see. She says, Sheikha, please clarify. Can women see her on his behalf in the first meeting or only after things have been discussed? No, they can, the first meeting and even after things have been discussed, they can describe, only if he is really serious. So the women that are coming in to describe, they have to have the integrity to make sure that that this man is really serious in all of this. Noura Habibat al-Wallah yahfazik ya Rabbi. All right, let's see. Beautifying women to get them married. That's a question. Can we beautify a woman? And let's say, you know what? Can a woman beautify herself in order to basically attract potential candidates? Okay, number one, we know that hijab is obligatory on every Muslim woman. There's no question about that. And certainly once she reaches the age of puberty. Yet, pay attention to this one. Some scholars do say that it is permissible to put slight beautification. Well, I'm going to explain that in just a bit. For women to encourage others to propose to them, such as using mendi, or maybe some ornaments. Quote, in Hashiyat ibn Abdin. Hashiyat ibn Abdin is a Hanafi book. It's actually huge. It's like in 23 volumes or something. Yeah, 21, 23 volumes, depending on the copy. This is what he said. He said, نص أهل العلم أن تحلية البنات بالحلي والحلل يرغب فيهن الرجال سنة. Ooh, pretty straightforward. He said it was quoted by the scholars of the scholars that beautifying the girls with certain ornaments in order to amuse or to try, basically bring attraction or attention to men is a sunnah. Let's look at Sunan ibn Majah. What is the evidence? He said, well, the Prophet ﷺ said, لو كان أسامة جارية لحليته وكسوته حتى أنفقه. Said if Usama was a girl, I would have beautified him and given him basically the right, like nice, cute outfits or nice outfits in order for me to marry him off. Yet, a couple of things to mention here. When girls are, let's say, at the age of teenagehood, they're interested in probably, I don't know, putting slight makeup on or probably beautifying themselves, etc. There are certain conditions on this, okay? Number one is that, okay, if you're interested in getting married, then you're doing this for that purpose. But if you're doing it to just bring attraction and just draw attention and just display yourself, then that would be haram. Yet, even though some scholars had said this, I'd be really careful, especially in the age of this exaggeration of all this type of beautification that girls would put out there in order to drag or to attract and to basically bring attention. I would say if it is for the purpose of seeking probably marriage, etc., then I would say, well, it's important to mention that this is a considerable opinion, but I would be really careful in how it is used. So girls, please use your piety to make sure that you are taking this opinion. I wanted to throw it out there. Okay. I wanted to throw this opinion out there, not because I wanted the girls to say, yeah, well, I'm trying to get married and here it is coming out with makeup and going her earrings sticking out of her hijab and probably, walking in a certain way. There is this spaces that we have to keep in mind. Things like Mendi, scholars had differences of opinions on whether this is considered as part of a zina zahira or not. Okay, just to mention that one. So this isn't talking about reducing your hijab and showing your neck or reducing your hijab and wearing tight clothes and wearing these high heels. And this contradicts hijab. The area that they were talking about in beautification is the area of a zina zahira. They weren't talking about beautifying yourself and putting all this makeup and putting all and dressing up in an exotic way and saying, oh, well, I'm actually trying to get married. And here's the quote that in Gems of Light I had learned about. No, this is talking about what within the border of a zina zahira. This isn't talking about outside of that. That's why they said certain ornaments, maybe rings, maybe a little bit of mendi, or maybe dressing up in a certain way that doesn't contradict hijab. That's what they're talking about. That's what it is talking about. It wasn't talking about putting all this makeup and calling all these and basically trying to bring attraction in a certain way. Definitely contradicting hijab. If it contradicts hijab, and if a person sees that you're contradicting hijab, and you are also looking for a person that has deen, well, you're contradicting yourself. Because if it's a person that has deen, he would recognize that this isn't something that Islam would allow. Okay, let's see. The ruling on engagement. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي مَا عَرَّضْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْ خِطْبَةِ النِّسَاءِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there's no sin in what you had given. There is عَرَّضْتُم, التعريض and التصريح. What is عَرَّضْتُم? التصريح is to literally ask the person directly for their hand in marriage. That's tasrih. That's literally, in a verbatim way. Hey, I'm interested in getting married. Okay. Yet التعريض is doing it in an indirect way. For example, let's say on college campus. Okay. This happens a lot on college campus. And he basically thought, hey, can I have your dad's phone number? Can you have my dad's phone number? Okay, why would you want my dad's phone number? Yeah, I'm asking, I would like to talk to your wali. What is that? That's ta'rib. Why would you want to talk to my wali? All right. The answer is no. Well, why else? And for what other reason would I want to talk to your wali? I definitely am not going to discuss the math problem with him unless he's a math professor. But I use the word wali, which basically is meaning meaning that I am here using a certain word that usually is in the context of marriage. This is ta'rib. But let's say this ta'rib, okay, she says, oh, no, thank you. I am definitely not interested. The end of the story. Okay. But let's say, yeah, here's my dad's phone number. Okay. What is that? That's ta'rib. What is that ta'rib meaning? Well, I mean, why else would she give you her dad's phone number unless she is somehow interested, right? So is that ruling on engagement in terms of that ta'rib, is that permissible? Is that not permissible? What about things like reading Fatiha, exchanging gifts, and so forth? That, inshallah, those questions and other questions in relationship to engagement, what about doing things using technology? What are the rulings in regards to that? And what are the rulings in regards to maybe having a power of attorney? And what about in terms of teen marriages? What does Islam say about that? So we're going to talk about that, inshallah, the day after tomorrow. If there are any questions, if you would like to unmute yourselves before we end today's session, I'd be happy to listen to, inshallah. MashaAllah, I can see a lot of, let's see, if a proposal comes from a religious person and the girl's sister says, my sister is smart, she won't be able to handle him physically, is it really appropriate for her to say that? I'm sorry, but why is your sister acting like she is the wali? She's not the wali. And she can give a recommendation, she can give her experience and basically her opinion, but her opinion is not the final answer. She's not the wali. Okay, especially when the person is bringing the proposal, says it's natural and not a big issue. She is not the wali, and she doesn't make even if the father is sick, then I'm sure she's got other walis, whether her brothers, her uncles, those would act as the walis, and definitely not the sister. With all my respect, sorry ladies, you cannot be a wali whatsoever. No matter, even if you have a PhD in fiqh, you cannot be a wali. That's a completely different ballgame. Completely different ballgame. You cannot be a wali. Completely different ballgame. Your experience in life, even if you are 50 years old, your experiences in life is completely different than acting as a wali. A wali has a different position, not only in decision making, but also in the role that he plays in that position as basically a backup and a support for that woman. So a wali is not only in decision making, and even in terms of decision making, marriage is a completely different ballgame. I mean, an older sister can be wise and maybe even wiser than everyone else, or even a younger sister. It doesn't mean that if she's a woman that she can never be that wise person to basically, solve matters, or even, anticipate whether this is right for her or not, etc. But at the end, whether it's her brother or whether it's her sister, at the end, they would discuss it as a family and see whether this is the right thing for her or not. It's not just, is it appropriate to tell her this? I mean, let me explain one thing. Between the ages of 0 and 10, the differences are huge. A child that is 0 years old, okay, and a child that is 10 years old, the level of experience, the education, the communication, their knowledge about the world, 0 to 10 is huge. And between 10 and 20, this disparity had basically gotten smaller. Of course, now a 10-year-old is capable of communicating, capable of understanding to a certain limit. A 20-year-old, definitely. Comparing 20 to 30-year-old, the disparity has gotten smaller. Now the person that's 20 years old, even though we're talking about the same amount of years, we're talking about 10 years. But between the ages of 20 and 30, the disparity has gotten smaller. And therefore, this older sister must understand that just because she was my older sister when I was 0 years old and she was 10 years old, that disparity is not going to be forever, that's the disparity, or that's the amount of difference between us. 20 and 30, the disparity has gotten smaller. Between 30 and 40, if I'm 30 years old and you're 40 years old, yes, we're 10 years apart, but guess what? The disparity has gotten smaller and smaller. We are considered the same age group now. We're considered the same age group now. 40 and 50, we're definitely the same age group. We live the same experiences, marriage probably experiences, life experiences. Definitely, I had my own, you had your own. 40 and 50, we're the same age group. 60 and 70, we're definitely same age group. So just keep that one in mind. So this older sister, I think it's important to bring it to her attention that if your sister is 25 and you are, let's say, 35, we're pretty much the same age group. So she has to understand her authoritative type of, behavior to dictate, hey, this is what I'm going to rule, and this goes and that doesn't go. Hey, she has to understand this 25-year-old girl is not the 0-year-old girl anymore. And when she was probably 15, the disparity gotten smaller. And therefore, discuss it as a family on what needs to be done and how we can basically eliminate maybe the wrong decision making, and see what options we have out there and how we can make sure that we're making the right choices. Let's see. Is it appropriate for her to say this? Well, I mean, she can say this. She can say that that's her opinion. Do you have to take her opinion? The answer is no. You don't have to take her opinion. That's her opinion. She has the right to say her opinion. And this is what I think, that this is not right for you for 1, 2, 3 reasons. Let's see. The other sister says, what if it's long distance? Should they wait until they meet in person to see her hair, or can they see it on FaceTime or send pictures to the mother? Well, the same that applies in terms of ruling in person applies on camera as well. So the Hanbalis would say, well, if we're to consider the Hanbalis would say, if we are to consider that this is just between let's say this woman and this man and the mahram is approving, or the wali is approving, then in that situation, the Hanbalis would say whether FaceTime or whether in person, it's the same. And the other scholars will say, well, whether FaceTime or in person, it's the same. So even if, for example, for the other scholars, the majority, they said, well, if we're basically having the mother basically describe her and so forth, then that would be permissible. Is it better to wait in person? I mean, that depends on the circumstance, the circumstances that really, I would say, that surround the case. Definitely in person, nothing is equivalent to in person. FaceTime, it doesn't give you the same results as you were to have, the camera gets your nose sticking up right there, makes you really appear different than what you really are. In person, it really has a different humor, but at the end, there are circumstances that may probably be that's the best circumstance available, or that's the best option available. So, you would have to study the circumstance before you would say, okay, this is what I recommend or you recommend. It really is depending on the circumstances that surround the case at the time. Okay, if anybody would like to unmute themselves, I would be happy to hear questions, recommendations, and go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikha.
Wa alaikum assalam. Go ahead, dear.
Alhamdulillah. So I'm going to try to make my question not as long-winded. And I feel as though you touched on this earlier. But basically, what would you say for sisters? Well, for context, I'm a revert, and I have many friends who are also reverts as well, mashallah. And they are on their, marriage-seeking journey. They're doing everything, learning, and, just getting more knowledge about marriage, what to expect, and things like that. But a lot of them are very realistic. They're in my age range, like 30 and onwards, and they are willing to look at compromises and things like that. But I feel like, especially in the West, this culture of, oh, you deserve better than this, you deserve more, you deserve that. How do you balance that where it's like, okay, I want to be realistic, I want to be very ready for flexibility when there needs to be, but at the same time, I don't want to have a utopian, as you mentioned, a utopian sense of thinking about what I deserve, because it often is tinged with like this arrogance, almost like, oh, well, you have this kind of career, you have this salary every year. Why would your husband have less than you? Why would he not have this if you have that? Like, it's very like, I feel as though it keeps us kind of stagnated in our search. So if you could comment on that, that would be great. Jazakallahu khairan.
It's two things. In Arabic, we say لا إفراط ولا تفريط. So what we mean by that, it's basically in between the two extremes. I'll tell you one thing. Although, yes, I definitely said, hey, ladies, don't exaggerate your requirements on what you want to look for and what you want in a potential candidate or in a spouse. I would also say, ladies, don't underestimate your value. Okay, so it's not, I know I could be sounding like I'm, contradicting myself here, but I would say, don't underestimate your value. All right. But at the same time, I want you to be realistic. Don't underestimate your value. Don't sell yourself for cheap. Okay. And at the same time, I would also say, look into, one, your biological clock, two, the situation that you are in. I mean, you could be living in a city, let's say maybe your daughter is in, maybe you had a previous relationship, you were married to someone else, but you have a daughter. So that would actually make it harder for you to find somebody that is willing to accept your daughter with you. Maybe you had two, that makes it even harder. Three, that makes it even harder. So you have to know your circumstances, and based on your circumstances, you're going to then say, well, this is how much I need to compromise. Okay, so look into your circumstances. If there are children involved, then your circumstances are slimmer. If, for example, you have health issues, mental health issues, you have preferences, you probably, to you, your job is really important. To you, you're not willing to, give up on your job because it's a high pay salary job. And to you, that's more important than even getting married. Some people are like that. So that's for you to know about yourself. That's why I'm saying know more about yourself before you go and know what you want, because when you know about yourself and what you want, ask yourself, what are you willing to compromise? What are you not willing to compromise? All right. And that's going to determine how much you compromise on the other parts. So one woman, she's like, I'm willing to compromise to move to another country. Another woman is like, no, I'm not going to compromise that because my children are basically, I'm a 50-50 custody with my ex, and I can't be away from my children. So that's to her a deal breaker. Another woman, she's like, no, I worked hard to basically be a doctor. This is what I want to be, and this is what I studied for, and this is the place, my career. This is the clinic that I work in. This is the best clinic, etc. To you, this is more important than a marriage relationship. Okay, if that's a deal breaker for you, then you would have to recognize that not many that are within the radius of your job are going to be available. So then therefore you have to ask yourself, okay, if not many are within the radius of my job and area of work are not available, then that means I have to give up on 1, 2, 3, 4 other qualifications that I was looking for. So you just have to be realistic. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying give yourself for cheap. Absolutely not. But I'm just asking you, be realistic and know the circumstances that you're in, and certain things, what is a deal breaker to you and what's not a deal breaker to someone else is probably, something that you would have to state within that profile. What's a deal breaker to you? And sometimes, depending on your case, if your case is, I would say, maybe a hard case. What I mean by a hard case, you have children, you may have certain disabilities, you may be older in age, you may be, for example, not on the high rank of beauty, then in that situation, I would probably not put a lot of these qualifications right there, that I would put many restrictions, and perhaps maybe, but I have a nice character. For example, I have a nice character, very smiley, very happy, cook great, those different things that, maybe I can bring attraction. Then maybe I can, if somebody were to interview me in person, maybe they'll be interested. And in that situation, I would say, don't put a lot of these qualifications on your profile, but I would probably recommend letting them know what's a deal breaker to you, certain deal breakers, not everything. And that way you won't have them not recognize your circumstances, okay, and see the other good things that are probably about you. So I know I may sound like, okay, how do I market myself? I'm not saying to market yourself, but I'm just saying that in reading profiles, what really can make many people run away. And I'm just letting you know that, yes, it's permissible to sometimes, I don't want to mention maybe a certain profile. I don't want to put up a picture of myself. I don't look good on pictures, for example. Okay, somebody might say, I wouldn't look good on pictures. I don't have the best physique, but I do have a nice personality, or I have this or have that, and I would like to meet the person in person. Maybe attract them differently, etc. But that's another thing that you might want to, I guess, don't sell yourself for cheap, but at the same time, know what's out there. At the same time, don't be too utopian, be realistic as much as you can. There are a couple of videos that I'm going to give you, inshallah, on YouTube, available, that I would say did a really good job in helping us be realistic in what to look for, in how profiles are read, what to put on that profile, what not to put on that profile, and what guys are looking for and what girls are looking for. And certainly, there are certain things it's not necessarily based on religion. It's just based on statistics, studying psychology, studying, certain features, studying certain realities out there, which, it's not religious based. It's just telling us about humanity, just telling us about realities about human beings and realities about what's out there and how to read the numbers and how to basically know about ourselves in order to know what to look for. So I hope I answered that one, dear.
You definitely did, mashallah. Thank you so much.
Allah barik fiki. Let's see. The sister is saying, if both are 23 years old or of the same age group, but the man is healthy while the woman is physically weak, is marriage still appropriate? Can we assume that the woman might not be able to manage? So when you say physically weak, I would say that's a very broad word. What is physically weak? Because physically weak, she's not definitely going to get into martial arts. She's not expected to do some kind of karate class with him. So I don't know what you mean by physically weak. To be able to handle a marriage is completely different than handling, I don't know. Okay, being smart, physically smart, that's okay. What is physically smart? What is physically smart? What is physically smart? I mean, I know mentally smart. How do you become physically smart? I don't know what that means. Maybe in martial arts, she just knows how to hit the target. I don't know what physically smart means. I know mentally smart, but how do you become physically smart? Sorry, you said physically smart. How do you become physically smart? So explain that to me. I'm trying to think of physically smart. How do you become physically smart? Meaning she's slim. Oh, okay. So in marriage, dear, you don't have to be fat to be strong. Okay. And in life, you don't have to be fat to be strong. Slim does not mean you're strong or you're weak. Okay. Being slim does not mean you're weak. In marriage, being slim, or even in life, by the way, being slim can actually mean strong, okay, because it can also mean healthy, okay. Being overweight can sometimes be a sign of weakness, because if you are overweight, you're obese, that means your heart is not working as strong as when you are slim. Your body is definitely in a higher end of a sugar level, etc. So being slim can sometimes be a sign of strength and not a sign of weakness. Okay, so just because she is slim, that does not mean she's incapable of managing a household. She can manage household. She's going to be washing dishes, carrying laundry, and not fighting with the dishes. At least I hope she's not fighting with the dishes. And cleaning the laundry and putting it in the laundry. I hope she doesn't have to rip them up. So that's a completely different thing, that she does not need that much strength. Okay. And yeah, so she doesn't need that power. and martial arts. Being slim does not mean she's incapable of childbearing. Okay, unless she's super slim, that's a different story. Well, so is super fat. You can have all these health problems and physical problems, but just because she's skinny doesn't mean that she is that she's weak. Okay, marriage dynamic is a completely different ballgame. A person that is slim can be healthier for childbearing than a person that is fat. Okay, just to say that, on that end. So if you mean by physically smart, okay, yeah, she can actually be smarter by being slim and being healthy than a person that is probably on the other end. So I hope I answered and understood the question. So I hope I was physically smart to understand it. Okay, let's see. I've noticed that within our generation, Gen Z, she says, many youth seem to treat the deen as more of an aesthetic than a true way of life. Totally agree. It is as if some use an Islamic image to appear more pious or to attract the opposite gender. This isn't just an assumption. I've seen enough evidence to be concerned. How can someone genuinely seek out a sincere and honest person, especially when even parents can be convinced by this outward appearance? Love and absolutely loved the way you had worded it, Sumaya. Absolutely loved it. Believe it or not, right now in our times, I would not necessarily say this is a Gen Z problem alone. I would say this is a modern problem as well because of the whole focus on appearance on social media and how we portray the perfect image of what looks attractive, what looks religious, what looks of integrity, what looks strong, what looks where there's definitely a huge focus on how things appear on camera than what they actually carry on the inside. Definitely, this isn't just a Gen Z issue, but definitely in the Gen Z, definitely this is a major issue because they did not live otherwise. They did not live to see a world other than what they had learned to see on camera. So this definitely makes it harder, and definitely influences the way that they would see things. I think it's important that we would educate not only Gen Z, but all the right now we're seeing even Alpha, and we're seeing the other generations as well, those, the with the classification that they would put it in. Definitely this is a modern issue. I think it's important that we would educate how to look outside of this lens or outside of this screen and see the world otherwise. And sometimes to help them see outside of this screen is to take out the screen and let them be in close relations with people to see outside of the screen. I would definitely say, hey, live some time outside of this screen. In other words, you know what, sometimes stay away from this phone, maybe not even carry a phone. Do not buy phones for your teenagers. Definitely not. Let them learn about social relations, learn about people, learn about life outside of this image that really just portrays everything based on what would fit as good looking on camera. And the only way to do it, some ilm is when I would give you a lecture about it, but other ilm does not come through lectures, but other ilm comes through discipline, through a firsthand relationship. That is the other ilm. And certainly that discipline can only happen when you take out the different attractions, the different things that are pacifying their ability to learn through that discipline, and say, you know what, no phones, going to take away those tablets, going to take away those screens, going to take away all of that stuff. And I want you to go to the masjid and really see religion there. I want you to learn in this summer camp, or I want you to go and learn things at a close relationship. And probably you, instead of going to, I don't know, as a maybe traveling for tourism and all of that, maybe we should go and actually see those people in refugee camps, or probably see those people in maybe hospitals, or maybe visit those in homeless shelters or whatever it is, or maybe interview those people that are less fortunate, the poor people, whatever it is, and really see what it means to be clean, what it means to be strong, what it means to be nice, what it means to be a person of a genuine character. What does that mean? What does that look like outside of camera? Maybe let them see that and let them replicate that and see what it means and see how it feels. I hope, inshallah, I answered that one. But, there are a lot of great podcasts that tackle this question that you put out there about image and what and how not only religiosity, but everything in life right now is all about aesthetic, is all about how it is portrayed on camera. Even religion, it's like, oh, they'll go for Umrah, and it's like, oh, take a picture of me with Mecca behind me, and me, having a nice position with a religious appearance or whatever it is. It's like, oh, really, that took away all the spirituality in it. It's all about how it appears, whether it's a religiosity, or whether it's a marriage, or whether it's a, being studious on education. How does it appear on, me throwing my hat up in the air and yet it looks good on camera? It's all about aesthetics. It's all about appearance. Unfortunately, we're living in this society, but I think it's important to educate. There are many out there, great podcasts on how to educate, how to take this away, and how to also let them live in another type of education, which is not lecturing, but in terms of discipline. Should a single mother go into polygamy marriages, and should they share that they're single mother in marriage? Okay. To share as a single mother, yes, definitely share it in the profile before you get that, because not unless somebody is willing to take that and recognize what that means, are they going to be coming in. This is a deal breaker. Definitely single mother, have these many children, and may get it out there. I would definitely recommend doing so. As for, do I recommend a single mother to go into polygamous marriages? In general, I do not recommend going into a polygamous marriage unless you have, let's say, an exceptional circumstance. I do not recommend being in a polygamous relationship, period, unless you have a certain circumstance that probably lets you see that as the best option. Polygamous marriages are not a walk in the park. They carry a lot of drama, a lot of anxiety, a lot of injustice, and not unless you are willing to compromise, willing to I guess, recognize that you are thick-skinned, to know that there's going to be some talk, there's going to be some injustice, there's going to be 1, 2, 3 issues within this, and you're like, you know what, that's better than the life that I'm living. Fair enough. It could be the best option for some, and the only option for others. Okay. So it could be the best or the only option for others. At the end, I would say what suits A might not suit B, but I do not recommend going into a polygamous relationship. If she is a single mother, whether she is single or whether she is not single, it depends on her circumstance. It could be the only option. And for others, it may be not the only option. And what determines that? Believe it or not, there are so many different factors that determine it. Are you willing to relocate? Two, level of beauty. By the way, guys really care about that, ladies, a lot more than you think. They really, really care about that. So I don't know about that. Number three, legal status. That was also something that may determine a lot. What kind of passport do you carry? What kind of legal documents do you carry? It can mean a lot. It can mean you can move to that country or you cannot move to that country. Other issues may sometimes be major, and health issues. That's for you to also keep in consideration. We'll talk more about that, inshallah. What do you think of this love bombing during courting? I have to learn what that means, to be honest. I don't know what that means, so explain it to me. I don't know what that means.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. So, yes, it's a concept I believe, I think the Gen X or Gen Alpha have come up with, but essentially, it's a situation where the person who is in the courting journey, they want to give you all this affection and all this, like, these rosy kind of promises and make it seem as though like, oh, you're the one for me. And a lot of sisters are kind of like, oh, is this person being genuine? Like, are we just matching with compatibility, or is he doing too much? So,
guys are experts at this type of what you call love bombing. They know exactly how to give you that. And for number one is that it's not permissible to actually do this type of romantic language during engagement. That's number one. Number two, I would stick to the Islamic way and letting you stay to the pragmatic side of it. What do we mean by that? It's like, okay, what do you do? What is your day like? Your relationship with your family, etc. Stick it to this pragmatic type of conversation, and not, yeah, you're just the person, exactly what I was looking for. All of that is more of this type of talk, sell talk. It is just selling you talk, and usually these people are really just selling you the talk, but then they don't really live it. The people that really live this are usually the ones that take their words seriously before they say it. They're usually the ones that they live their words seriously. And in order to really see how serious they are in their words, you got to study their background. It's so easy to say, I'm going to make you live like a queen. It's so easy to say it, but not unless the person really knows what the price and what it costs to make a woman live like a queen means. Will they really say it? Trust me, a person that knows what it costs to live like a queen knows that it's going to require a lot. All right? And a person that knows that it requires a lot, trust me, they would think of the amount of investment needed and not the words needed. The ones that are willing to give you words, they're not the ones that are willing to give you action. But the ones that don't give you words, but they give action, that's what you're really looking for. Words are really easy and really cheap to say. You can go to ChatGPT and say, hey, give me nice words to attract a woman. Oh, and they'll give you words, and I could easily memorize it and just say it. So easy, can just memorize it and just, hey, this is what I'll tell you. This is it. No, you want action, not words. So I hope I answered that one. This is it. Inshallah, subhanakallah wa bihamdika nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. And we'll see you all the day after tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام.
Wa alaikum assalam.